I'm lower on Campbell than the NFL is. Campbell's my tackle 3, and I actually don't think that Will Campbell can play tackle in the NFL. I think if you're taking him, you're going to find a long-term guard and a good one.
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog version 2.0. NFL mock draft, the final mock draft on the Pat Mayo Experience. Thor Nystrom on the line with me. Usually, Thor, we got Ray on with us, but he got hit by the internet devil, and now he does not have internet for an entire day, but we have to forge on.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers to Ray and the Dallas area internet situation going on right now, but we do have to forge on. The show always goes on, Pat, so we're here. We're going to bang out a mock right now.
And this will go a little bit differently because it's just Thor and I doing this. I'm just going to let Thor make all the picks, and maybe it'll end up a little bit different than last time because it was you, me, and Ray that did it. If people are looking for version 1.0 that we did a month ago to see how much has changed over that time, just hit the description. The link is down there right now. Reminder to smash the like to this episode, sub to Mayo Media Network, and Ray is going to be joining me post-draft to break everything down. So let's go to the very top of the board, on the clock, still with the number 1 pick, because there's no trades in this draft, Thor. Tennessee's got the pick. Has anything changed between now and 4 weeks ago?
No, it hasn't. If anything, it is solidified with Tennessee and Cam Ward. You know, they told the 2 Colorado kids, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, they politely took away they were going to meet up with them and have a private workout, and they politely pulled out of that. All the wind is blowing towards Cam Ward, and it appears that we got a free spot top of this draft.
Did you see that they released the players that they're inviting to the draft for the first round when it's televised, and there's only 17 of them, and Sanders wasn't one of them? It really made no sense to me.
That they're inviting to the draft?
Yeah, it just seemed like, why only invite 17 guys? Why not invite everyone?
Yeah, well, I thought Sanders was on. I think they invited 4 quarterbacks, and it was Ward, Sanders, Milroe, and Dart. I mean, Milroe and Dart were the 2 more surprising ones of that list, right? Another quarterback or 2 into this first round.
Yeah, well, do you think that they're okay? We just had a quarterback go off the board to Tennessee. Sanders is gonna go at some point in the first round. What do you think the over/under is for quarterbacks in the first round?
I think before it was 2.5. I don't know if that market has changed at all with the news of Milroe and Dart both getting the invite to the draft. I mean, like that's something where I would have heavily leaned under, a month plus ago. Now I'd probably be pretty heavily leaning the over on that. If there's I'll put it this way: someone at the NFL has made a mistake if there's only 2 quarterbacks going in the first round, because they don't want the kids sitting there in the green room. Now, this did happen a couple of years ago. You remember the crappy quarterback class we had? I think it was it 3 or 4 years ago, with Kenny Pickett. But they invited that year 2 of the other guys that were invited, Matt Corral and Malik Willis. And obviously they sat in the green room and did not go in the first round. Last year, every guy that they invited went in the first round. But the previous couple of years to that, you had a couple stragglers and you had the 2 quarterbacks. And in this class, Dart would be Corral and Milroe would be Willis if it ends up happening like that. But yeah, it's interesting to see or for us to learn, is there a mystery team on both those guys?
Well, right now it's still set at 2.5, but the over 2.5 is minus 500. The under is now plus 350.
Oh, there you go.
So
there you go. Yeah, I mean, I definitely would not be laying that minus 500. If anything, now maybe you go the other way with the juiced odds and go under, and just hope we get the Corral Malik Willis situation there.
Well, how much do you think this Derrick Carr news that I don't know how long he's going to be out, but it sounds like it might be a torn labrum in his shoulder, which means he's probably not starting the year with the New Orleans Saints. Does that thrust them into the first round QB market immediately, or do you think they'll just pull a Saints and just do something weird?
Well, I think they should have been sniffing around that anyway. I found it really interesting, the timing of that news coming out, where you're so close prior to the NFL draft. It wouldn't seem to be the Saints' prerogative to let that leak out there, right? Like, because all of a sudden that leaks out. Everyone and their brother's like, oh, they're going to take a quarterback now. Why would you want people knowing that? or you're putting it out to try to put people off of your scent. I just found it really interesting with the timing on that. But yes, like for the Saints, you can either decide in this down quarterback class, let's push the envelope because we like one of these guys, or if Shedeur ends up falling to number 9, we could end up popping him. Or do we just want to go for the gold and tank this thing out? Do a Daryl Morey of the NFL. Spencer Rattler, you're getting 17 games next year. We're not going to do a whole lot to improve this year's roster. Maybe they take a bunch of projects, right? Like a bunch of high ceiling guys. You take swings and then you set yourself up to get 1-1 next year. Where Arch Manning, you would hope if you're in that spot, you're the Saints, you're praying that he declares. There's a thought that Arch Manning stays in college for the full 4 years, like the two Mannings did previous to him. He would have to jump after his first full year as a starter and after his third year total at Texas to be in next year's class. But another subplot to consider when you're thinking about the Saints in the first round.
Well, it'd probably be more likely that guys would stay in college for the 4th year now that they can make $13 million or something playing in college.
That too. Yeah. And the Mannings don't really need money, but yeah, I mean, we've seen this in the past, even prior to the NIL era, both Peyton and Eli making that decision. So, I mean, there are people out there that just assume Arch will be at Texas for 2 more years. That we don't know, right? Like Arch hasn't talked to the media a whole bunch. He's certainly not going to tell us what his intentions are a year from now, but there's already people monitoring that.
So no pick has changed through one pick from V 1.0 to the final mock draft for 2025 in the NFL. Cleveland on the clock right now. For the second overall pick, Travis Hunter is now minus 350 to be the number 2 pick, because we've seen Kenny Pickett get traded to the Browns. We've seen Joe Flacco re-sign from after a year absence, took him to the playoffs, goes to Indianapolis, now back in Cleveland. As I want to make a joke that Joe Flacco is like 64 years old, but he's almost identically the same age as me, and I don't feel that old. So I'm not going to call him an old man, but dude's an old man. Is there a chance they still go quarterback here? Oh, I heard they still have Watson on the roster too, but he may never play a snap again for the Browns. Does Travis Hunter make the most sense for them?
I believe that Travis Hunter does make the most sense, and I do think that Travis Hunter will be the second pick. Not to say that Cleveland doesn't take a quarterback in this draft, maybe even a first-round quarterback in this draft, but with this selection, I absolutely expect this to be Travis Hunter. The thing that I've been told to monitor with Cleveland with regards to the quarterback class is if Shedeur Sanders falls out of the top 10. So this requires him getting by the Giants at the next pick. It requires him getting by the Jets at 7 and the Saints at 9. But all of a sudden, if that happens and Shedeur Sanders gets into the mid-teens, to watch out for the Cleveland Browns moving up. Cleveland Browns have the first pick in the second round. They have 2 picks in the third round. They have a whole cornucopia of picks on day 3. They have a ton of draft equity here that they're sitting on after the second pick. So you could easily see Cleveland swing and move back up if Shedeur Sanders comes within range, and that would be about the mid-teens. If Shedeur Sanders were to get to 15, that's the Falcon slot currently. The trade that would jive that, Cleveland trading the first pick in the second round, their 2 third-rounders, and then their 4th in 2026. That jives on all the trade charts, even with the little bit of a tax baked in for the move up and for the move up for a first-round quarterback. That would jive. So that's the thing to watch out for there. But as far as the second slot, I expect the Browns to take this draft's best player. That is Travis Hunter.
So what do you think that Hunter does for the Browns? Is he a full-time receiver, part-time DB?
He's a full-time cornerback and then a part-time receiver initially. And the way that you can do this, where you're keeping him off the field, certainly on offense, the obvious running downs, but you can do that a little bit on defense too. The super obvious running downs, you don't need to put his body at risk on that. Travis Hunter, it's a passing down player on both sides of the ball. If you can get his snaps about 85% on defense, you can get to about 40, 45 on offense. I think he can jive that as a rookie. This is going to be a discussion between whatever team takes him, in this case, the Browns, between their medical staff and their analytics department, getting in there on what is the data of how many snaps a player around this frame we could expect them to be able to play before. If we go above it, we're elevating his injury risk beyond where we're comfortable, but they're going to figure out a plan for him as a rookie. Travis Hunter wants to play every single snap on both sides. We got to protect him a little bit from himself, but He's going to be playing both ways right away. I mean, that's just what it is. Travis Hunter wants to be the Shohei Ohtani of football. He's going to be given that opportunity, and I think he's going to be given that opportunity in Cleveland, where he not only becomes CB1 right away, he also becomes wide receiver one for the 40, 45, 50% of offensive snaps he's on the field for a rookie, which would bump Jerry Jeudy to the second tertiary sort of role that he is more befitted for.
If I'm Travis Hunter's agent and I'm talking to the Browns and they want to take Travis Hunter, for me and for him and his future paydays, I would want that to be the other way around. And if a team couldn't guarantee that for me, that he's not going to get wide receiver money when the time comes, he's going to get corner money, that'd be a real problem.
Yeah, but I think he's going to get, once his rookie contract, barring injury, of course, we always have to knock on wood with this, but I think he is going to reset the non-quarterback position market once we get there. And I know that there's this thought of like, why would Travis Hunter on a rookie scale contract for 5 years? Why would he play both ways when the tradition of the rookie scale, you're not baking that in, right? You're giving the team back more value than they're able to pay you back. Well, that's a kid that did it out of high school when he went to Jackson State in the FCS. What did Jackson State have to give Travis Hunter? And he was playing both ways there. Obviously, the last 2 years at Colorado as well. Again, that's a guy who wants to be Shohei Ohtani. There's some things that are more important than money. Travis Hunter wants to create a legacy here. He believes that he is a unicorn player. I agree with him. And he wants to become something different in the NFL. And I think he's going to be given that opportunity.
So we originally had Sanders going to Cleveland the first time around, but it does seem over the past month there's been more negative talk about Sanders than positive talk. And you just mentioned if he slips outside of the top 10, do you think that's realistic that he slips outside of the top 10?
I'll believe it when I see it. I do think that there are scenarios, and the Giants hold a lot of cards here. Obviously at number 3, right? If they bypass him, you go with Abdul Carter, or if I was wrong and Travis Hunter is there, I think, the Giants would end up taking Travis Hunter. But if you fall past there, then the Jets at 7, your new administration, you have Justin Fields. Would you take him there? We talked about the Saints before. So that's it. You have these sort of 3 stops along the way. And if all of them go in a different direction, that's a scenario where Shedeur Sanders falls into the mid-teens. Again, I'll believe it when I see it, but that is the thing to watch out for with the Browns, right? The move back up.
Can I give you a sneaky Sanders landing spot if he does decide to fall down the draft?
Yeah.
San Francisco. Don't pay Purdy, use Sanders instead. When everyone, I'm not doing scouting that people are doing. Obviously, that's why I'm talking to you guys. But if I think about what everyone has told me about Sanders, what he's good at, what he's not good at, it sounds like he's a perfect Kyle Shanahan quarterback. And then you don't have to pay Brock Purdy.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'm not, but they've already sort of started down this road, but I wouldn't be blowing up all the skill talent that you have acquired and some of these other different guys and getting rid of them in order to pay Brock Purdy top of the quarterback scale type contract. I wouldn't do that. I mean, like I'm with you philosophically. Would you be able to get a trade for Brock Purdy? And probably at this point, maybe not, but like, the 3-dimensional chess of that, I would be leaning more towards your side than perhaps the road that they've already started to walk down a little bit, but I'm with you, man.
So let's go to the Giants. You said they might have a hinge pick in this draft. I think not taking Sanders here makes this mock draft way more fun to see where he would end up going in the spot now. But in terms of the odds market right now, all our odds today are powered by coolbet.com. If you go to coolbet.com right now, you still have a chance to opt into the free PME Open giveaway if you want to win tickets to Toronto, June 7th, to come see the Pat Mayo Experience live show. Coolbet is open to anyone in Canada outside of Ontario. But June 7th, Thor, what's the drive from Minnesota to Toronto? It's 13 hours? You should come up, drive up, come to the live show.
Maybe I'll be there. Maybe I'll be there. Absolutely.
There you go. Just get your passport. You'll be ready. But tickets are on sale right now. If you hit the description of the show, you can find everything down there. You don't need to win a free trip. You can just come to the Pat Mayo Experience Live. Meet me, Rob, Cam, Tim, Jeff, Garion. The whole gang is going to be there, and we're doing a live show. And it's really nice in Toronto on June 7th. They're playing a golf tournament there that weekend. So it's PGA golfing weather, which means it's not your typical Canadian weather that you keep in mind. And the U.S. dollar goes a long way up in Canada, at least of right now we're recording this. Who knows in the future? Do you think that Abdul Carter minus 300 is the pick to the Giants?
I think it would have to be in this slot. Yeah, like now we do have to say the Giants, a big contingent of them are checking out Shedeur Sanders one more time prior to the draft. It happened in this week with the private workout, and there was a lot of chemistry between Shedeur and Brian Daboll. You look earlier this process when those guys were dapping each other up, and they seem to have some inside jokes. And Shedeur would be a very good fit for Brian Daboll's system as well. The Giants probably made a mistake last year by not taking the quarterback in the quarterback rich one. It's hard to say that because I love Malik Neighbors as a player, but you wouldn't be in this quandary right now if you had taken your quarterback last year at 6. You maneuver around a little bit, so that's sort of what puts them into this quandary. But I think if you do like Shedeur Sanders, and I think Brian Daboll does, can he convince people above him of that? If that's the case, you can basically auction this pick off. As long as you stay, well, for sure in front of 7, but maybe even in front of 9, right? You could trade down. You could still get Shedeur Sanders there, pick up some extra draft equity. But I think that this slot is going to be Abdul Carter. I think both Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter have to go in the top 3. The top quarterbacks in this class, and Pat, we talked about this the last episode. I would have had Shedeur Sanders 5 if you shoved the 2 quarterback classes together, the last one and this one. I would have had Cam Ward 6. So, last year we had that stacked quarterback class. This year, not as much. And then I would have had Dart and Milroe down even, obviously further than that. With this pick, you have the 2 guys there at the top, Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, clearly the best singular talents in this class. I think Abdul Carter has to go number 3 in this scenario.
Is there a chance that the Giants go full Daniel Jones here and take Jackson Dart with this pick?
I think that's where Shane gets the pink slip walking it. Mara just walks right there, right after the thing, and we see it on the ESPN cameras. Shane, now he has to pack up his boxes like in Varsity Blues when Coach Kilmer, they said they wouldn't run out for him after halftime. That's what they'll say. Joe, we ain't showing back up in the war room tomorrow if you're still here. So then he'd have to pack up his boxes. I don't think he can do that.
Patriots on the clock at number 4. The favorite for this pick right now is Will Campbell. That's minus 180. And then it's who knows what is going on after this. Do you think that Campbell ends up becoming the selection for the Patriots, or do you like someone better for them?
It seems to be the way that the wind's blowing. I'm lower on Campbell than the NFL is. Campbell's my tackle 3, and I actually don't think that Will Campbell can play tackle in the NFL. I think if you're taking him, you're going to find a long-term guard and a good one, right? But like if you want the pure tackle guy, for me, the kid from Missouri, Mambou, and Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas, I would have both those guys above Will Campbell. But again, the NFL loves Will Campbell, and every time you talk to someone who is in a meeting with Will Campbell, they'll just start fawning about him. This is a guy who is for a long time has been training for this moment, including in the interviews. So he's a guy who tends to impress the NFL folks. His coaches and his teammates obviously vouch for him, go to bat for him. So New England in this scenario where Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter have not fallen here, Will Campbell would seem to be the pick, so we can lock that one in.
All right, let's lock him in. Number 4 to the New England Patriots. We actually had Abdul Carter going to the Patriots last time around, so we have a lot of change at the top of the board outside of Cam Ward for Mock Draft 2.0. Again, you can find part 1 down in the description as we talk through more in depth on the players and the scenarios. We're trying to figure out what's going to happen this time around, be as accurate as possible. Thor, I do want you to tell everyone what is going on over at Fantasy Life with you and what draft coverage that you'll be having. I'm guessing there'll be some prop betting going on up there as well during the week.
There'll be some prop betting, and the big thing this week, my Thor 500 board drops with 500 player comparisons. It's my baby that we drop every year. Releases in 2 days, Thursday the 17th, 1 week before the draft. So that'll be coming out on Fantasy Life, and then you get your top 500 overall, but I actually ranked out to 725 or 750 in the position rankings, going a little bit deeper. So like for people out there that I call the UDFA sweepstakes after day 3 gets done on Saturday night, I call that the dessert draft. Because you sort of get another mini draft there. It's just, you get this free for all. And for people out there on Saturday night, you're wondering who your team took. Who does that guy kind of play like? What's his ceiling? You can look in my deeper position rankings because, again, have them ranked out deeper than that.
So you can find that all up at fantasylife.com. Jags on the clock at number 5. Where are they going now?
This is an interesting one. Mason Graham has gotten a lot of steam here. Jacksonville could use an interior defensive lineman, and now that Trent Baalke's gone, you don't have the adherence to thresholds with arm length like they did previously. That's the reason that Travon Walker was Jacksonville's pick a couple of years ago over Aiden Hutchinson. Just had to do with the arm length thing. Mason Graham, that's the knock on him. You have the lower arm length there, and he also didn't test much during the pre-draft process, didn't put the athletic numbers out there. The other one, and Mayo, I'm going to kick this one to you. That would be Chuck, right? Mason Graham there. The one that I've heard for whether it be Jacksonville staying in the slot or listening to a team that comes up, makes a swing up the board, is Tyler Warren. The closer we get to the draft, the more steam there is with Tyler Warren. You have these offensive-minded head coaches that are looking at a prospect that's sort of unlike anything we've seen come out of that position in a while. It's Brock Bowers, but 3 inches and 30 plus pounds extra, right? But you still get the manufactured touch guy. You get the guy you move around the alignment, this sort of stuff. If there is an out of left field pick here, a curveball pick here, whether it's Jacksonville or whether it's a team trading up to this slot, I think it's Tyler Warren. But I'm going to put it back to you, Mason Graham or Tyler Warren here.
Well, I am looking at the odds right now, and if I pick Tyler Warren here, then I have pure justification to bet Tyler Warren 22-1 to be the 5th overall pick. So I'm there for it. And logically, it makes sense. Evan Ingram, they gave the pink slip to. He's in Denver now. Like Brenton Strange is fine, I suppose. But if they can get an elite player at that position, and then you can put him on the field along with Brian Thomas, all of a sudden you have the makings of a pretty good offense. What do you think the chances are that we talked about interior defensive line. Why wouldn't they go offensive line here? I mean, this pick has to help out Trevor Lawrence in some sort of way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that would certainly be in play as well. Obviously, Campbell's gone. The new administration there with Gladstone, Liam Cohen, would you prefer to go, let's say, Mambou here, or the interior defensive lineman, or the singular offensive star like Tyler Warren? And Liam Cohen, he is going to be heavily involved in this discussion. And you look at the Jaguars, their skill talent, the receiver position, obviously the quick drop off Brian Thomas. They had gotten rid of Evan Ingram. Brenton Strange, he's fine. You pair up with his old Penn State boy here. You'd have the double one. You could go 12 personnel with that. Start Brenton Strange, have him in the inline, and then you can use Tyler Warren as your move guy and move him all around the formation if you were to go in this direction. Brenton Strange doesn't nullify a pick like this, and it's certainly not the singular talent, the offensive weapon type guy that Liam Cohen would be looking for in year one. So I think that's the one that would make sense, again, if they sort of go off the grid here a little bit.
I like it. Tyler Warren, number 5 to Jacksonville. Now we're throwing a wrench to this back end of the top 10. That puts Vegas on the clock. We took Jeanty with this pick last time around, and he remains the favorite, -150 to go to the Raiders at number 6.
Yeah, this one, we're going to stay chalk here. This one just makes too much. It almost makes too much sense to even happen. Another thing, I've been told to monitor is with that 5th pick, there are discussions there of teams, potentially moving up. Tyler Warren could be a target. Jeanty is the other target, because the NFL knows the same stuff that we do. And, you have to get ahead of the Raiders if you want to do that. So would a team make a swing up to try to beat the Raiders to the punch? But if Jeanty's available at 6, this one, it just makes too much sense. And this is around the range a guy like that should go, right? I mean, this, in my opinion, best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley, who went number 2 overall. I think he's a bit better than Bijan, who a couple years ago went 8. Between 2 and 8, we're right there in range for the Raiders, who desperately need a running back here at 6.
Do you think a running back is what the Raiders need, though?
Raiders need a lot.
Yeah, so why wait? I don't want to say waste it on a generational running back, but you just mentioned he's the best player since best running back prospect since Saquon Barkley. How'd that go for the Giants?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not as well for the Giants. The Eagles just swoop in. You get on a better organization there. Running back, you could think of it as analogous to an offensive closer in some ways. So your point's well taken. If you're a team that's going to finish last in your division in baseball, the value of having an all-star closer is not as much for you as a World Series contender. The point's well taken there. but the Raiders do need more skill help, whether that be Jeanty, whether that be Tedero and McMillian, right? That the receiving core needs help. The one thing you've got there is Brock Bowers. They've now solved the quarterback position as well. How do we make things easier for Geno? But the philosophy of both the head coach there, Pete Carroll, going back, people bring up all the time beast mode there in Seattle. Certainly there was that. Those teams, the identity was built with the run game. But you go back prior to that, Pete Carroll, his coaching career in college, remember some of those ridiculous backfields that they had at USC, but obviously the one everyone loves, Reggie Bush and Lendale White, but a coaching philosophy heavily suited around the run game. And then Chip Kelly, he loves his running machinations with Ohio State last year. Obviously, they had 2 top 5 running backs in this draft class on that Ohio State team, led them to the national title. So I do think there's a lot of things about this that make sense.
One thing that we do forget, I mean, it's not that we forget about it, that never gets brought up on those Seattle teams with Marshawn Lynch, was I believe that they had 2 Hall of Fame tackles on that offensive line, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, pretty good ones, for sure.
I don't know about this Raiders team and their offensive line, although it wasn't bad last year. It wasn't elite at the same time.
Yeah, and Jeanty, it's a one way to work around a mediocre offensive line is Ashton Jeanty shattered all the broken tackle records that we have. Last year, he was like 48 or 49 more than number 2, which was Cam Scadaboo, who was around 100. So when you're talking a full third more, there's a gap between you and number 2 on there. His yards after contact, Jeanty last year, yards after contact, he had more yards after contact than any other FBS runner had, period. So, I mean, that's a guy, you're going to break tackle. You saw against Penn State, they were in the playoff. Penn State was loading up the box against Boise State. They were not afraid of Boise State throwing down the field, certainly. And so against all these packed boxes, against a quasi NFL type defense, obviously Abdul Carter and Colby King and all the different guys that Penn State had there, Jeanty was throwing people off him and breaking all these tackles. There was one run, he had 5 or 6 broken tackles on one like 8-yard gain, only an 8-yard gain, but he was just, it was like Street Fighter out there throwing people off of him. So, for a guy, it's going to greatly improve your offensive efficiency and move the chains for you. I do think this one makes sense.
Okay. What does the Chip Kelly offense look like in 2025 with the Raiders? Because when I think Chip Kelly, I think Oregon or what he did with Nick Foles the year in Philadelphia. But his offense isn't really like that anymore, is it?
No. I mean, he's, he used to be the innovator with the hurry up stuff, but then defenses adapted to it, right? Like you're not innovative anymore if the counterpoint, the checkmate to what you're doing is already there. So to stay one step ahead, you got to keep evolving. So it is a bit of a different ethos. It was interesting watching that last year at Ohio State. Back there at college, the way that they ran that, there was a lot of vertical looks in that offense, and then the mixing and the matching of the running backs. I liked what they did with Will Howard's game, working around his limitations early, but then improving him a bit going down the field, and the mechanics with that. Chip Kelly did a lot of work with that with Will Howard. But yeah, it's not the same offense that you remember from Oregon and then the Eagles.
In terms of the running backs in this class, in the tiers, so it seems like it's Jeanty 1. Is there even a tier 2 of guys, or is it Jeanty, pronounced gap, rest of running backs?
For me, it's the pronounced gap, and then the next 4 guys. I know that there's people that say, Hampton's, but some people even say they argue that they have Hampton in the same tier as Jeanty. I definitely disagree with that, and I think Hampton's closer to the other backs between Caleb Johnson and then the 2 Ohio State kids for me. Omarion Hampton is going to go in the first round. He is going to go in the top 20. The NFL, I think, perceives maybe a bit more of a gap there between Hampton and then the Caleb Johnson, the 2 Ohio State kids.
All right, Jets on the clock at number 7. Sanders still on the board right now, but they have signed Justin Fields. New regime. Do you think they go out of their way to draft the quarterback of the future, or do you think that they can work with Justin Fields long term?
I don't think that they would take a quarterback here with that new administration. I think they're going to try to start a little bit quicker than that. I mean, personally, yeah, for me, I would probably be taking Shedeur Sanders here, but I don't think that the Jets are going to do that. We'll be curious to see with all those new decision makers in there, what direction that they end up going. But I think you look over their needs list, they obviously need a receiver. That was one thing, one position group that obviously got blown up there. IDL, yeah, you could use help on both sides of the trenches. Right. And then, tight end is another sort of tertiary one, but with Tyler Warren being off the board there, you take that off. I think for me, this one, it's going to be between Tet McMillian and then Mason Graham. I'll kick it back to you, Mayo, and we'll put you to another decision between the pterodactyl receiver and McMillian, or between Mason Graham, putting him next to Quinnen Williams to replace Javon Kinlaw there on the front. I think you could go either direction here.
I think you have to take Mason Graham if you're the Jets. You have Garrett Wilson. You need to rehabilitate that, whatever's going on with him. I mean, it did not seem like he and Aaron Rodgers got along very well. Yeah, it leaves you a bit decrepit in the receiving core. But what a year after someone on this show said they had one of the best receiving cores of all time. Now, that's really shifted on them going into this year. But they've already spent, they used the draft capital on Garrett Wilson a few years back. Will they go back? How good is Tet versus even last year with Marvin? It's kind of funny to think how much better Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors were than Marvin Harrison, but going into it, everyone was convinced that Marvin Harrison was the number one receiver. Like, where does Tet rank amongst those guys as prospects coming in? He doesn't seem like he's on their level, does he?
I would have had Tet as wide, you push the two together, and then you don't count Travis Hunter as a receiver. I would have had him 4 behind Odunze. You shove those two classes together. Tet is eerily reminiscent to Drake London from a couple classes ago. Also, a lot of similarities to T. Higgins coming out of Clemson. And I think likewise, it's a guy where if he can be the number 2 receiver for your team, you're getting one of the NFL's best wide receiver twos, speaking to the T. Higgins thing. But if not, he's a low end wide receiver 1, or sort of more in the vein of a Drake London. But yeah, it's a guy, we've seen his game work because it's so similar to those two guys.
I think that they assess defense because their defense regressed so mightily a year ago that I don't think it's going to take that much to get it back up to where it was. And if they can run out an elite defense again, I think that actually benefits. I think that an elite defense would benefit Justin Fields more than adding just another really good possession receiver who runs good routes.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
So I'll take.
Yeah, you could definitely argue that.
I'll take Mason Graham with this pick. Mason Graham right now 7-1 to go as the 7th overall pick. Tet is 16-1 to go as the 7th overall pick. Armand Mambou is actually the favorite at even money to be the 7th pick.
Yeah, Trenches is another one, right? But Mboa, I put him in, he's in contention for me still to be the first offensive lineman off the board. We'll see. Do the Patriots end up going with this theme on that, or do you take the guy that has the much longer wingspan, who was better in the SEC last year as a tackle than Will Campbell was, more athletic as well, et cetera. We'll end up seeing on that. But yeah, I would be taking more of the long shots with the Jets slot there with the odds what they are.
Carolina's at number 8. We had Tyler Warren going to them last time, but unfortunately for them, he's now off the board. So where do you think that the Panthers turn?
I think they turn to Jalon Walker here. Jalon Walker is from the Carolinas. The Panthers, they like bringing their guys home or keeping them home, as was the case with Xavier Legette last year coming out of South Carolina. But Jalon Walker, he's also what the doctor would order for that defense. Their front 7 was so bad. You have a need at edge rusher to improve the pass rushing, and then also at off-ball linebacker. And Jalon Walker's the interchangeable part that you can shift between the two. I really like his pass rushing. He opens your eyes when you watch his film because it's like, oh, it's a sawed-off guy. How is that going to work? But he beats NFL tackles, the ones that he has faced. I also love him blitzing from the off-ball spot. He's really good at delaying for a second, and then he shoots forward and he can contort himself through the smallest of openings there, get skinny. He'll move his body one way or the other. It's like sort of like a door's closing on him, and he can just get through right at the last second and squeeze through there. He gets into the backfield a whole lot, and then it's a fabulous guy as a quarterback spy as well on the downs where you don't want to send him after the quarterback on the passing concept. You get the sideline to sideline thing in run defense as well at the off-ball position. So I think it's a really good fit with Jalon Walker and the Panthers.
So this is the biggest riser that we've had. Do you remember where we had him mocked last time around?
I think it was late 20s, wasn't it?
It was. It was to Baltimore at number 27.
Yeah.
So has there been has there been steam on him this month, or is this just a good fit for him?
No, there's continued steam on it, and including specifically to the Panthers, but it's a guy who's rising. It's a guy earlier in the process. It's an unorthodox prospect, right? When you're looking at a guy who's going to take whatever 45% of his snaps on the edge at the NFL, is 6'1", 245, right? It's an unorthodox, again, sort of an edge defender, but you have that faceted skill set there. Where a part of the time at off-ball linebacker, I liked his work there. There's some things that he can do to keep improving his play diagnostics. I noticed sort of a different thing with him, play recognition, than I did with Jihaad Campbell, a guy we'll talk about in a little bit. But the way I wrote about it, my scouting report was Jalon Walker's the guy at the red light who he'll hit the gas before it goes to green, and then he'll be going over the line or whatever. Whereas Jihaad Campbell, and that's what you see some false steps with him. He's so aggressive and he wants to get downhill real quick, but sometimes you'll see that he can erase it. Jalon Walker can real quick because laterally he's crazy explosive. So you'll see him erase a mistake of a false step right off the bat, but that's what you see with him. And then Jihaad, it's a delayed, right? So he wants to see the full green of the light, and then it's like, okay, confirming in my head it's green, and then he hits the gas. So you get a sort of delayed the other way. Schlesinger is the guy with the great instincts, but obviously not the athlete or as versatile as these two guys in the linebacker class.
If you're looking to get some cash down on the NFL draft, I mentioned Cool Bet earlier. If you're in Canada, outside of Ontario, great way to do that. But the big one that you need to be doing right now, because it's available to basically everyone, Underdog right now has a promo going for the NBA playoffs. Plus, you can get in on NFL draft over there as well. But this extender promo is pretty awesome. If you get in for game one of any NBA series, they will offer you a 40% profit boost token. And the longer the series goes, the more profit boost you get for each of the games. But you got to be in on each of the games so you can get it. So if you go game one, game two, game three, game four, game five, game six, and whatever series you continue to get down on Underdog goes to a game seven, you will receive a 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then for game seven, a 100% profit boost token for that game seven. So if you find a series that you love and you have the right eye for in the pick'em game for those player props, this is the promo you want to get into on Underdog right now. And if you're new and you want to get in and you use code Mayo at Underdog, you will receive a deposit bonus of up to $1,000, and you'll get a free pick to go along with it to help you with this extender promo. It's one of the best offers I have ever seen any site put out. So if you want to get yourself gigantic profit boost the entire time with an ability to just simply double your profit by game seven, get in on the extender using code Mayo at Underdog right now. New Orleans is up. We've talked about New Orleans already, Thor. Is this a quarterback for them?
I'm going to send Shedeur Sanders there. And I know, the information we've gotten about Shedeur all process, we talked about this a bit in the last episode. I think some of that is off, both about the analysis of the player dash the person, but then also the information we've gotten about who is in, who is out on Shedeur Sanders. Nobody going to tell their media contact that they're in on Shedeur Sanders, because when Shedeur Sanders, that name gets put out there on the internet, it leads to clicks. So it's all quiet on the Western front as who's in on Shedeur Sanders. The Saints didn't go to his previous pro day workout. So there was some thought of like, are they off Shedeur Sanders? But we have seen in the past teams where they didn't contact a guy at all during the pre-draft process, and it turned out that guy was their top target. We've seen it the opposite way, where teams are out there trying to be like, oh, we're interested in this guy. We're going to all of his different stuff. And that's used essentially as a smoke screen. So some of that stuff I toss out there. Shedeur Sanders is not only the best quarterback out here, in my opinion, by a decent amount, but he's also the best overall prospect. He would be at this point on the board at number 9 for the Saints, and obviously a position of desperate need. So I'm going to send Shedeur Sanders to the Saints at 9.
Right now, his draft position over under is 8.5, and to go over 8.5 is minus 330. It is kind of crazy to see a quarterback who seems to have a lot of pedigree fall down this low. It's really strange to me. Like, that's how much is it a media thing that people hate Sanders? Is it a real thing that people hate Sanders? Or do they just think that there's a circus that comes with them and they just don't want to deal with it?
Well, I think for the media at large, you get the thing of the more times you put his name out there, the more clicks you're going to get. That's just the fact of the matter. Is this ain't Aaron Rodgers? Why was that non-story for weeks and weeks out there? Because it gets clicks, right? You talk about it every single day. I think that's a part of it, creates some of this false narrative and how he gets out there more often in some of these stories. But I think the other thing, I do not believe that there is trepidation inside of NFL buildings about Shedeur Sanders, the person. the thing that has sort of been forwarded out there, supposition maybe from some of the public. But I do think that there is some trepidation there. And I think what the trepidation is, it's from coaching staffs considering if we bring in Shedeur Sanders and we start out slow next year, if we start out 1-4, there will be people with pitchforks outside the stadium demanding that I'm fired to bring in Coach Prime after this. Now, if you're Kellen Moore here, you're inoculated from some of this, right? The fan base isn't going to try to kick you out 5 games in because they want Coach Prime reunited with his son there. Obviously, Cleveland would be an example more, or the Giants, of 2 coaches that might be like, oh man, if we start off slow next year and we have Shedeur, the whole fan base is going to try to be getting me fired. So I think the Saints would make more sense. I also think it's a good fit for the offense there. And then playing in the dome, Shedeur, the thing that I love so much about him, it's the accuracy and the placement. Upper tier when you look back the last couple classes as far as the quarterback goes. Does he have the arm of Cam Ward? No, but the accuracy is better, the placement is better, and he takes far better care of the ball. This is a chain mover guy who, again, is not going to hurt you with field flipping as far as that goes, the decision making. So people harp on the sacks that Shedeur Sanders took without acknowledging that Shedeur Sanders played behind terrible offensive lines the last 2 years at Colorado. When they got to Colorado, it was a 1-11 team. I believe the only game that they won was in overtime that previous year. By the end there, it took 2 years. All of a sudden, they made Colorado a contender, but you played behind the bad offensive line with no threat of a running game. So the defense knew what was coming. You get the immediate penetration. The defense could pin their ears back. And sure, Shedeur Sanders, the sack was a little bit elevated, but nobody gives that context with him. And they also don't give the context of, for a guy that faced pressure as often as he ended up facing it because of that offensive line, he took care of the ball. He wasn't making YOLO decisions with it. There are a lot of circumstances on a football field where the best play you can take is a sack, as opposed to putting the ball up for grabs. And that's something I see a little bit too much with Cam Ward is chucking up YOLO balls, passes attempting throws that are impossible to complete, where the defense has a better chance of getting the ball than the offense on a given play. You never see that with Shedeur Sanders. So one of the reasons that I like him a bit more.
The way that you've described both Ward and Sanders to me, it sounds weirdly like CJ Stroud and Bryce Young from 2 years ago. It's inverted now.
Yeah. I could definitely see that. Yeah. And again, I just think people lose it with Shedeur's game, as far as what he actually is on the football field. You get sort of lost in these narratives. Another one that you see with him, the funniest one is probably, you heard this earlier in the process. Shedeur's not a good athlete. It's like, okay, the son of one of the great athletes in the history of the sport is not a good athlete. And then it's like, you could just Google him. Shedeur ran a 4.65 coming out of high school, which is 97th or 8th percentile for the quarterback position coming out of high school. Then we had him on the GPS the few times he does get out into the open field, because Shedeur, it's not a guy that wants to breach the containment like that. You see him scrambling. When he gets up close to the line of scrimmage, he will slam on the brakes, because you see a tendency, of course, with defenders to start getting sucked downhill. It's a involuntary reflex. You start to see the quarterback get out around the tackle and start going towards the line of scrimmage. It's like, okay, I got to get off my assignment. Shedeur Sanders plays that impulse against you and slams on the brakes, and then he'll hit someone on the hands wide open and lead them even further into space. So yeah, I just think people get lost with it, but it's a guy that I do end up, at the end of the day, I do expect him to go in the top 10. I'll believe it if I see it when he falls out, because this is a guy that absolutely should be a top 10 pick in this class.
Chicago up on the clock right now at number 10. Which direction do you think the Bears are going to go?
I'm going to toss them the tackle from Missouri and Mambou. There is a shot here of Omarion Hampton, though, and that's something that's picking up a little bit. Omarion Hampton for that team would be the David Montgomery to Swift's Gibbs. If you're able to do that, Chicago needs more help in the running back room. However, they could get that in round 2. Right where you sit there at the top of the round with these teams that are so running back desperate in this class, you have to decide, do you want one of those consensus top 5 guys? You sort of know around where you're going to have to be, whether the Bears or the Cowboys pick there in the second round. That might be the last stop for one of those consensus top 5 backs. Do we want to earmark one of those picks to it? Or do you want, I mean, the running back class is crazy deep, obviously, into round 3 and then all the way through day 3. So how do you want to do that? But if Chicago, if that is something that they're prioritizing, they already fixed the interior offensive line, earlier this offseason in free agency. Do you try to go out and get the tackle, or do you go with the running back? But I'm going to go with Armand Mambou here from Missouri, and sort of the last step of improving that offensive line.
Yeah, that's a slip for him. If he doesn't go 5 to Jacksonville, it's plus 280 if he goes after the 6th pick in the draft, which we have him doing right now, number 10 to Chicago. San Francisco on the clock. I still like my Sanders to San Francisco take. I really hope that comes to fruition, just blow everyone's mind. But obviously that can't happen because we have Sanders going at number 9. Where do you see the 49ers turning?
This would be a tough scenario for San Francisco, a team that I've been told that they are looking more into the skill stars of round 1 than people realize, whether that be a potential trade up for a Tyler Warren. I've even been told do not discount the possibility of Ashton Jeanty there, which I know will blow people's mind, but they play the positionless football thing. Jeanty and McCaffrey theoretically could be on the field at the same time. Jeanty was a slot receiver starting as recently as his junior year of high school at Frisco High. He actually took over for Marvin Mims in the slot for Frisco High before switching back to running back as a senior. Obviously, he went ballistic, and he stayed true to Boise State, the first team that was in on him on the process. But San Francisco, this scenario, both those guys are gone. You're not going to reach up for Hampton, so now you're deferring the running back to the next day. You're probably going to go trenches here, but of course the top 2 tackles are off the board here. I'm gonna go with Kelvin Banks. I think for San Francisco here, Kelvin Banks, if he doesn't go here, the Dolphins, who just lost Terron Armstead, he's gonna be going right around here. I think Kelvin Banks is gonna be going higher than people think, and San Francisco desperately needs help in the trenches now. So I'll go with Kelvin Banks here.
Well, Ray's not here to make the Cowboys pick for his favorite team. That means you get to make the pick for Ray, and maybe you want to troll him. Maybe you want to give him who he wants Dallas to take. Who do you think they end up taking? Because this is where we had Tet going the first time.
We had Tet going there. Tet's off the board. Is this a time where I think skill position is where I'd be heavily leaning, obviously. Do you go Matthew Golden? Do you keep Matthew Golden home? Start his career at Houston. Last season was at University of Texas, the Longhorns. Or do you grab Omarion Hampton? Omarion Hampton, the guy where his floor of this, I think that would be at number 20. I'm going to go with Golden. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to kick it to you, Mayo. Well, you haven't gotten as many decisions here. I think they could go either way here. So I'm going to kick it to you for Dallas. You want to go Hampton or you want to go Golden here?
I mean, we can take Tet. We do not have Tet off the board yet.
Oh, Tet's not off. Forget that. Tet is the pick here. I'm sorry. I was getting mixed up with that guy. Tet for sure. Then, if Tet is on the board here, I think this is a quick one for Dallas, assuming that Jeanty's not here, right? Like earlier in the process, it was always Jeanty to Dallas at number 12. Jeanty's going to be gone by 12. We all assume, but that is one thing that could, a factor that could end up pushing Tet down here, right? Earlier this process, a lot of the mock drafts, you have Tet going in the top 10. But some guys move up, other guys move down. Tet's here. This would be a fabulous compliment for CeeDee Lamb.
You just mentioned Miami, how they have basically been out of offensive line. They had no one to block for Tua, and I hear that's bad news for Tua. He kind of needs people to be blocking for him. He does get the ball out quickly, but if he doesn't, he's going to be throwing up thriller hands on the ground again, which is never a good sign for the longevity of his career. Although I saw they just got rid of Jalen Ramsey as well. So they went all in on this strategy, kind of like the Rams did a few years ago, like when they signed an old Jalen Ramsey of, we're going to get all these vets, we're going to make our Super Bowl run, and they won the Super Bowl. That was great news. And then they kind of had to go into the wilderness. Fortunately, Sean McVay was good enough, and Matt Stafford was good enough to keep them afloat for a while. I don't know what is going on with Miami. Is there a chance they just completely trade Tyreek and bottom out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the path that you have with the construction of this roster to winning a Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's a fun team for sure, and I like the philosophy behind it more or less, but like, you're going to have to hit the reset button on this thing, I think, to build that thing out to be a Super Bowl contender here. Just a little bit too capped out there. This is part of the problem with giving a quarterback who's objectively not a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, the kind of money that you end up giving to Tua. This is the thing we were talking about Brock Purdy just a second ago, Mayo. I mean, it's the same sort of, it's a philosophical thing about team building, but now you're sort of backed into a corner with this, and the Dolphins have gotten backed into a corner in this scenario after the retirement of Terran Armstead, like we were talking about a little bit ago. You would love to be able to take the tackle here, but the top three consensus one are off the board right now. So would you defer to a Josh Simmons? I don't think you could go Connerly. You could go Gray Zabel. If you great, I love Gray Zabel. You know, it's a guy who's been going in the 20s in a lot of these mocks. He's got a shot to go a little bit higher, I think. He got 5-position versatility there. Was awesome at the Senior Bowl. He tested really well. But if you're going in this scenario with those top three guys off the board, you'd have to do something like that if you're going to do that, or you're going to have to go totally off of offensive line. Mayo, what do you think? What's your situational assumption here with the way the board's fallen for the Dolphins?
It almost seems like Dolphins to draft offensive linemen might be the biggest lock of the first round.
Yeah. I mean, we can toss some Gray Zabel down. You know, again, a guy, you have the versatility up and down the line there. The Dolphins, they don't just need one starting offensive lineman. They need multiple of them. And with Gray Zabel, not, you know, you think about a guy with the versatility like he does, the value, it's not just in a vacuum for Gray Zabel himself. Situation like you have with the Dolphins now, you have so many moving parts on that offensive line. You're just trying to go into camp, find the best sort of mix and match that you can. Gray Zabel's versatility would allow you potentially to play up other spots as well. You know, you just sort of see what would be the best alignment of the five qualitatively. So it's a guy maybe a little bit above where the public has him now, but there absolutely is a shot that Gray Zabel goes in the teens in a scenario like this where the Dolphins are stuck outside the top three tackles. I think he's more in play maybe than people would think.
Indianapolis at 14. We're going to start going rapid fire here. What do you think they need the most, and where do you think they end up turning based on who's left?
Tight end, definitely. Colston, Loveland, definitely. To me, this feels like a free spot with the tight end falling down here. Colts would love Tyler Warren, of course, to fall down here. I don't think there's much of a shot with that, but I think if Colston Loveland gets here, the Colts who have talked about need to improve the tight end position, didn't do anything for it in free agency. I think they're giving you a flashing neon sign of what they're going to do, their intentions here at the top of the draft. Colston Loveland gets here, so we're sending Colston Loveland to Indy.
You just broke the heart of my good friend Jeff Feinberg, Los Angeles Chargers fan.
Oh yeah, reunite him with Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, certain. And Jim Harbaugh presumably would love that. There's a couple of his old Michigan guys that he recruited there that the Chargers are sniffing around. You know, both Loveland, I think they'd love him at 22. Kenneth Grant is another guy I think that they would love at 22. We'll see if Will Johnson ends up getting down there. You know, a guy who's been falling a little bit. But yeah, you could absolutely see Jim Harbaugh with that 22nd selection popping one of his former Wolverines.
Atlanta at number 15. Do we have any closure on what's happening with Kirk Cousins? Is he going to be on this team as the backup?
It seems like they're posturing of like, oh, someone, you have to take money off of our hands with Cousins. You also have to give us a pick. And the NFL is like, no, we're good. Right. And so they're in the tough spot. Like they don't want to just cut Cousins for nothing. Then you have to assume all the dead cap hit on there. They want something back, but yeah, they're terrible. Terry Fontenot is asking for too much in compensation right now. So we'll see the way that ends up playing out. I don't expect Kirk Cousins on the Atlanta roster this year. It seems like a nightmare scenario. Why would they want that? Why would, obviously Penix and his development. So I expect something to end up working out probably with a team like the Browns. But yeah, they're in a tough spot with that.
The Browns can't just take every quarterback. You know that, right? They can't just have a roster of 8 quarterbacks.
We're trying to toss everybody there.
It's like a sinkhole. You just keep throwing stuff in. Maybe eventually it will clog and you'll find who you need. So what do you think Atlanta does then? Did they go out and they help Penix a little bit more? Because, and maybe I'm missing someone, but just in my memory over the past 50 years that Atlanta has just taken skill position guy in the first round.
Yeah, they have, and they've been eschewing the pass rushing help over and over and over again. Every single year, we're like, oh, this is the year Atlanta gets serious about the edge rushing. This is the year that they get serious about it. And every year they don't. This year, it's like, what's that part in Arrested Development where they're like, oh, all those people thought it would work for them and it didn't, but maybe it could work for us. I'm going to give Atlanta again an edge rusher in this one, but we'll give them some versatility. We'll hedge off a little bit. Give him Jihaad Campbell here because Atlanta could use a linebacker as well. Jihaad Campbell, he went to Alabama as a 3-4 outside pass rushing linebacker listed as an edge with the, on his recruiting profile. He was moved to off-ball linebacker past couple years when he started in Tuscaloosa, but they would move him down for situational pass rushing. And I can tell you this, Pat, the pre-draft process, Jihaad Campbell, he spent it at Exos. He has been training as an edge rusher all pre-draft process. And again, that's what he did prior to, it's what he was seen as going into college football. Because of the needs on the Alabama roster, they've had all those freak edge rushers past couple of years. They wanted to get Jihaad Campbell onto the field. That's why you put him at off-ball linebacker. But for Atlanta, you could, essentially try to kill two birds with one stone here. We can plug one of the spots with the off-ball linebacker thing, but he is also going to give us that juice on the obvious passing downs. We can kick him down, kick off one of our run defending edge rushers, get Jihaad there, and then try to improve the pass rush that way. So we'll do Jihaad Campbell here.
Arizona is up next. Is there any player in this draft who doesn't care about the meals that they serve at the facility? Because I hear it's very bad in Arizona.
I think everyone's going to care a little bit about that. Yeah, it's like it's the one place you still need quarters and whatnot. You actually need the pocket change in there. Buy some of that stuff at the vending machines there. For the Cardinals here, you're probably looking at defense. The super dark horse would be a potential slot receiver. It's something they need, but could they save that for day two? I think Jalon Noel will be a great fit for Arizona, playing inside of Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson in round two. If we get there. But with this pick, you probably need to help out that defense a little bit more. You have edge rusher need, you have a cornerback need, linebacker. You could argue interior defensive line as well. I think with where the board has fallen here, two Michigan guys, I think would probably be sitting at the top for Arizona to sort of parse between either the cornerback and Will Johnson, outside of Travis Hunter, cornerback one on a lot of boards, including mine, or his teammate Kenneth Grant, who's the jumbo elephantine type interior defensive lineman who plays more like a three technique. So he has a really sort of interesting game. I think I would probably lean Will Johnson here for Arizona, but Mayo, I'll kick this one back to you if you want to get involved and disagree with me on it.
Yeah, I will. I just want to take Kenneth Grant here. We took Will Johnson to the Jets last time around. I think we had Grant to Arizona. Let's keep it in there because if cornerback 2 on the board continues to fall, this is very reminiscent of me to when the Patriots got Christian Gonzalez, and they were just like, yeah, just give me Christian Gonzalez. That sounds great.
For sure. Yeah, and this would evoke that, right? And then you had some weird guys going above him, the skinny corner that Washington took. That could end up being Maxwell Harrison. And this year, if Will Johnson does end up falling a little bit, and maybe you get some wonky picks like that, but Will Johnson, he is fabulous at what he does, but it's a guy who needs to be used in a very specific way. Maxwell Harrison, for instance, the guy with the awesome speed, he ran the fastest 40 there. It's a guy that you can put in man coverage. You can trust him out there, variety of different schemes. Will Johnson, you like him playing forward a little bit more. You probably want him in more in the zone as opposed to trailing guys downfield with his back to the quarterback, some speed guys. But, all these different guys, you use them correctly at the next level, their game will play up. If you don't, it's obviously going to play down. So, but yeah, that goes double for Will Johnson, I think.
So would Cincinnati consider taking Will Johnson at 17, or is he not the right fit?
I think for Cincinnati, you need to get trench help on one side of the ball more. I think that's got to be the thing that's prioritized. So I think that they would be looking there because of the way the offensive line has gone here. For me, Tyler Booker, this is a little bit rich. He's the young powerhouse, but not a great athlete. I think this would be a little bit high. I think we'd be looking on the defensive trenches with this pick, whether that be the interior defensive line, whether that be on the outside. I think for me, I would be between Derrick Harmon here and Shemar Stewart. You could also toss out Mike Green. But I would be with one of those guys. So Mayo, I'm gonna toss it back to you. There's a lot of different guys on the defensive front that the Bengals could go. Out of those three names, who do you want to go with for Cincy?
I'll go with Shemar Stewart. He's still being projected to go somewhat highly in some of the betting markets. And the last time that we did this, he went at number 9 to New Orleans. So it seems like it's a bit of a slip for him at this point. So maybe this is where he gets caught.
For sure. Yeah. And this would be a good value here. Shemar Stewart, he had the 10 RAS. He didn't do the agility stuff. He's much more the locomotive going north-south than going side to side. But with Shemar Stewart, you also get the awesome run defender. People, they focus on, oh, he had a high pressure rate, but he didn't get the sacks in college. He only had 4.5 over 3 years. But you also get a floor embedded from the run defense that Shemar Stewart gives you. He keeps the gap integrity. He's really good at setting a clean edge there, letting his teammates float at the ball, and then funneling it back inside to help. So I think this would make a lot of sense.
Seattle is up at number 18. Where do you think that the Seahawks are going to go in the new look Seahawks? But what is this team even going to look like?
Yeah, we talked about a couple teams. The board didn't fall great to them. I think Seattle would really like the way it falls here. You need a wide receiver there, but the 2 wide receivers that you have, they're traditional slot type of guys. You need a guy that can win on the boundary. McMillian would be the real dream, but he's gone. The other receiver in this class that can play on the boundary, has proven he can beat NFL type boundary cornerbacks and can win at all 3 levels. It's Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden, obviously he is much smaller than Tedero and McMillian, but a guy who has won on the boundary down the stretch, high leverage situations. You're in the SEC title game against Georgia. You're in the playoffs, and then the games that led up to them clinching the berth into the SEC title game. That's when the latter half of that season. That's when Matthew Golden ascended, and it wasn't that Matthew Golden became something different. It's that Texas finally realized Isaiah Bond ain't it. And us trying to force him as the wide receiver 1 here and force targets, so it ain't working. So Matthew Golden then ascended to that role, and Matthew Golden was destroying people at the end of the season. Matthew Golden doesn't get hurt against Ohio State in the second quarter. I wonder if you see a different team winning the national title this year. It's one of those sliding doors. In addition to the 75-yard Travion Henderson delayed screen that happened right after that, those 2 things don't happen. They go the other way. I think Texas advances to the next round, but in this case, Seattle desperately need the boundary receiver. You get one with Matthew Golden. Matthew Golden can also play the slot, but with this team, of course, you have Kupp, you have Jack Smith and Jigba. You won't have to do that as much. Seattle comfortable with having the smaller boundary receivers. They've obviously done that in the past with Mr. Lockett, etc. Golden Tate. So we'll send Matthew Golden out there.
This puts Tampa on the clock at 19. I think that you, Ray, and I discussed the last time around, is there anyone Tampa can take to move them up a level? They are so firmly entrenched as the next level team in the NFC. It's like, yeah, if you can get through Tampa Bay, maybe you're good enough to get to the Super Bowl. That's kind of their role. They're, Paul, what do they call it in UFC? Gatekeeper. They're like the gatekeeper team of the NFC.
Oh, yeah, gatekeeper.
Yeah, like they're way better than all the crappy teams. They're going to beat most of the average teams. They can knock off, like they beat Detroit last year. They beat most of the good teams last year. But when it came down to it, they got their asses handed to them. That was it. I mean, by that, I mean Baker fumbles the ball and all of a sudden Washington ends up in the NFC title game. But you have to go through Tampa one way or another, yet no one is considering them to be a serious Super Bowl contender. Is there anyone they can take to elevate themselves that way? Or do they need to hit the first 3 rounds and have all those guys turn out to be studs?
Probably a couple correct picks there, but yeah, if you hit a home run on your first couple, I mean, it's a team where the needs list is shrinking a little bit every year, right? So you're getting closer. Now they're walking the tightrope, right? Because you don't have the rookie scale quarterback cheat code, and you don't have a top 5 or 6 quarterbacks. So you do have to walk the tightrope a little bit. But yeah, you have a path here, and they have a couple of the needs, the primary ones on the defensive side of the ball. Improving the pass rush, and then potentially another corner. The way the board falls here for Tampa Bay, it would put them to a decision, and on the right way of things. We've had a couple of teams where they were sort of looking down the gun barrel because it was a non-advantageous scenario that the way that the exercise played out for them. This is an advantageous one for Tampa Bay because you have the pass rushing guys that could help you that have fallen down here, whether that be Ezra Raku, whether that be Mike Green. But you also have a thought experiment here that maybe you weren't anticipating heading in. They could use a cornerback, and the way that they run their coverages, it is a fit for Will Johnson. So I think this pick, with Will Johnson falling down the board, I think Tampa Bay, a team that's sitting dead red on, let's improve our pass rush. You would have to think about it here with Will Johnson here. So I think, Mayo, this pick, you're between Mike Green, the fabulous edge rusher from Marshall, who is going to improve your pass rush right away, or Will Johnson and get the immediate starter at cornerback and maybe a guy that shouldn't have fallen down here. Who are you taking, Mayo?
I think I'm going to take Will Johnson with this pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll solidify that and move on to Denver at number 20. Is that where Green goes then? Do they need a pass rusher?
No, this one we're going to Omarion Hampton. If Omarion Hampton gets to 20, Denver's going to take him. It just comes down to if he does or not. But with him being here, I think this is a quick pick from Sean Payton and crew.
Tell me about Omarion Hampton a little bit, not so much versus Jeanty, but versus the rest of the running backs in this class.
Yeah, he's scheme versatile, and that's one thing that you can draw a little bit of a designation between him and Caleb Johnson. Caleb Johnson, I think, is going to be a star in the NFL, the Iowa running back, but he has to go to his zone running team. And that's what his game is. He's the outside zone in particular. That's the way that Caleb Johnson can access his high end speed, because it was 7th percentile, 10-yard split. But then the high end speed, 22 miles an hour, and he gets in the open field, 225 pounds. But again, he has to go to the zone team because of that. Whereas Omarion Hampton, whether it's gap or zone, he has proven to be good in both. UNC ran both of them. Hampton's kind of an interesting zone runner because he presses the issue real quick, right? Like some of these bigger backs, Caleb Johnson, the one I was just talking about, Le'Veon Bell, Arian Foster, guys where they use the patience in the field right away. Omarion Hampton pushes the envelope quicker with that on the zone concept. So it's sort of interesting. It's not that he lacks patience, but it's just sort of a different style. And he obviously has that well-fortified build. This guy has been obsessed, Omarion Hampton, with weight rooms going back to high school. He owns every single lifting record at his local high school. They have these boards up on the walls, and Omarion Hampton is number one at all of them. He just a freak. They told Omarion Hampton to stop putting weights on the bars in high school because he had gotten to squatting so much that the coaches were worried he was going to break the bar, because he had the weights all, onto the side. And it's like, Omarion, that's as much as that bar can handle. So we need you to back off a little bit. But Omarion Hampton, he breaks the tackles for you. And in the NFL, the receiving utility you get from him, he's not going to run routes for you past the line of scrimmage, but it doesn't mean that you don't get the receiving utility out of him. Check downs, the dump offs, the screens, and the swings. Get an envoy in front of Omarion Hampton. He's not going to drop the ball behind the line of scrimmage. You get an envoy in front of him, and then it's the same thing. Good luck trying to tackle me in space. That's what it is. He 12 yards after catch last year.
That sounds like a great fit for what Bo Nix does too, because now Bo Nix has that option of you can just run a lot of fake. I mean, this sounds like Sean Payton football, honestly.
1000%. Yeah, it's a very good fit there. My comp for Omarion Hampton is Deuce McAllister, guy Sean Payton, also a little bit familiar with. Exact same dimension, same running style. They sort of both run upright. You have the element of power in there, but you have the explosion and you have the long speed with both those guys at the bigger frame. And again, like you're mentioning, the Bo Nix game, you know, all of a sudden you're doing other stuff. You get the defense off sort of the beat of that scent. You're on the one hash, and then you get Hampton leaking out the other way. You do a play fake one way or the other. You get him out there with an envoy in front of him. You own two guys out there. You're just wiping people out. Now it's a track race, and the one dude who's got a shot at him, good luck when Omarion Hampton gets up to top speed.
So when we did this a month ago, we worked under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now that hasn't happened yet. And again, I'm holding this show for a few days. It's going to be like 4 days from now before people actually see it. I'm not convinced necessarily that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback signed to the Steelers, yet I'm still pretty convinced he's going to be their quarterback next year.
Same. Yeah, same. And luckily for us, because even if, tomorrow or the next day or whenever Aaron Rodgers decides, maybe it'll be in July, but like if, even in advance that whatever happens there with him and the Steelers, I don't think it affects this pick at all. Like if you're going to take the quarterback, you're going to take the quarterback either way. I don't think the Steelers, you can't look at your situation and think you're close enough to being the Super Bowl contender that one piece gets us over the top. So even when you sign Rodgers, you get through for this year. I think you need to be looking at that contingency anyway. And Mayo, this is where we start getting into the thing with the two extra quarterbacks that were invited to the draft. Right? Why is Jackson Dart and why are Milroe going to be there? Is it another one where the NFL, you made a bit of a mistake like you did with Corral and Malik Willis a couple years ago, and then they're sitting in the green room after day one? Or do we have mystery teams that are in on them? I think the Steelers would make a lot of sense, and I think they would make the most sense with Jackson Dart. A couple years ago in that class that we're just talking about, Steelers had a shot. They had a decision between Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis. They obviously went with Kenny Pickett there. The way that they run offensive football, generally it's more towards the pocket passer type. I think Jackson Dart would fit that a little bit more here. We'll send Jackson Dart to Pittsburgh.
Jackson Dart any good?
Jackson was a very good college quarterback, and it's just did that come from the offensive system? He played in two different ones. He reminded us of this at his podium session, both at the Senior Bowl and the Combine. Kid, I understand what you're saying. I comes out of Utah, he goes to USC. He was in the air raid system for 1 year. That's when USC went out and they got Lincoln Riley to bring Caleb Williams with them. So that's why Jackson Dart went about his way, and he was at Ole Miss the last 3 years. You play for one of the most creative offensive minds that we have in the sport of college football with Lane Kiffin, where there's a lot of pre-snap motion, there's a lot of eye candy designed to try to free one dude who then Jackson Dart would be locking onto and shoving the ball into him. Jackson Dart, you see the arm talent with him. He can fit in trick shot throws. Sometimes he was fitting it into triple coverage to the first read when there would be a tertiary read not involved with the concept, who would have one side of the field by himself with one other defender. You just sort of miss that. So with Jackson Dart, it's like he was running the scheme. He was doing what Kiffin told him to do, and he was doing it at a very high level. But now you pull him out of that, where you have to make decisions in the NFL after the snap, as opposed to beforehand. When that's a Kiffin offense, you know where you're going with the ball, and you know the timing of when to get rid of the ball. Now in the NFL, it's after the snap when you have to make the decision with the bullets firing around you. That's a black box of his evaluation, right? And we have scary precedents for this. Matt Corral, the guy we just talked about, was one of them. Sam Howell was another one. The Phil Longo offense, there are similarities here. And so some of those guys that have come out there haven't been as successful. I can't say that Jackson Dart doesn't. He's one of the few quarterbacks in this class that checks all 7 Bill Parcells boxes of what Bill Parcells look for in a quarterback. He checks them all. I think Shedeur or Cam, one of those two guys, checks him as well, but you don't have many in this class. But again, there is that black box of, in the NFL, you have to make decisions after the snap. We'll have to see with Jackson Dart.
His over-under draft position right now is 24.5, and it's juiced to the under, so that would jibe with this if he ends up going number 21 overall to the Steelers. Chargers on the clock. Obviously, they can't have a Michigan tight end, but is there another Michigan guy we can give them? Or at least a Big Ten guy?
Yeah, well, I mean, they hate life right now because Kenneth Grant and Colston Loveland both went above them. So that's tough scenes for Harbaugh. He'd probably love one of them. I still think, the War Daddy interior defensive lineman, I still think is way up there. Obviously, that's why we sort of talk about Kenneth Grant there. But with Kenneth Grant being off the board, you haven't heard this connection a bunch, but I wonder if Jim Harbaugh, how attracted he would be to Derrick Harmon. Derrick Harmon spent the first multiple years of his career right outside of Jim Harbaugh. There, Jim Harbaugh obviously was in Ann Arbor. Derrick Harmon was in East Lansing, Michigan, and Derrick Harmon came out of Detroit. Was a guy that Michigan looked into on the recruiting trail. Michigan, obviously, they had gotten Mason Graham, they got Kenneth Grant. They end up going a different way, but Derrick Harmon played there up until last year at Michigan State. Then he goes to Oregon. He lost 20 pounds. This a guy was playing 325, 330 at Michigan State, more of your interior clogger guy. At Oregon, he drops down to 310, and he was one of the most disruptive interior defensive linemen that we had in college football last year, led the nation in hurries. So he's getting into the backfield, looked a lot more lithe. He has the long arms. He has the versatility. We've seen him play up and down the line. I think I'm going to go with Derrick Harmon here, even though we haven't seen this in a bunch of mock drafts. I think this makes a lot of sense if Kenneth Grant and Colston Loveland are both off the board here.
All right, Harmon, number 22 to the Chargers. Green Bay, your arch rival, on the clock at 23. Are they going to steal your Vikings pick?
Yeah, I think we have to with Jahdae Barron here. Jahdae Barron would be a perfect fit, the Texas cornerback for Green Bay. Jahdae Barron needs to find a zone coverage system, a team that defense that plays predominantly that. Most defenses, play about half the snaps out, but you want to go skew it the furthest that you can for Jahdae. That's where he's destructive in the zone system. You move him all over the place. He was a nickel defender previous to this year. This past season, they played him on the boundary, but they kept moving him around. When he was at nickel, if they put him deep, sometimes play him at center field. Other times they put him in the box on dime. He was their dime extra linebacker that they move into there. They were doing that same stuff with him when he was on the boundary, right? And they realized, he can help to erase the wide receiver one on the other side, but we can also keep doing the versatility stuff with him. But Green Bay running the heavy zone coverage that we still don't know with Jair Alexander, what's going to go down there. So I think Barron would be a great fit for them.
All right. So what do your Vikings do with the next pick at number 24?
I think this one, you would probably the offensive lineman being off the board. Gray Zabel, I think, would be of interest if he got here for the Vikings. He's obviously long gone. Same thing with Kelvin Banks. People haven't been talking as much with Kelvin Banks with the Vikings. I think they have to start if he did fall down the board here, because the Vikings, they need a left guard. It's one of the very few positions that they could draft, and you would get a day one starter there. But with the way the board's fallen here, I don't think that they can go offensive line. People out there might be saying, well, what about Tyler Booker? Tyler Booker is not a fit for the Vikings offense. Tyler Booker needs to be in the man gap scheme. Again, the young powerhouse coming forward in the phone booth. Tyler Booker, that's where he uncoils into you and he's going to blow you off the ball, but not a fit for his own system. He can't go out there in the second level and hunt for you. He's just not good at it. Or hitting the outside shoulder, right where you have to hit the spot with acceleration right off the ball. It's not Tyler Booker's game. So Tyler Booker is not going to be here. I think this would be the scenario. You might be looking at either a safety or do you pull up Donovan Jackson, who would be the immediate starting guard, or do you go interior defense? I think Derrick Harmon would be of more interest. Walter Nolan, I think, would be of interest too. I think I would lean towards Walter Nolan here. I know a lot of people go Malachi Starks. Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety, would be a great fit for Brian Flores' defense. But Walter Nolan would be a great fit too. And he's the last one hanging out here, interior defensive lineman who wreaks the kind of havoc that he does. You have so much potential with Walter Nolan. One of the top recruits coming out last year. He was the number one guy in the portal. He improved a lot with Ole Miss. You saw the pass rushing before. Last year, he got way better as a run defender. I'm going to go with Walter Nolan. Maybe it's just what I want, but that's a guy. He would be the backup at all three interior defensive line positions for the Vikings right away. And I think you get him plenty of snaps in that rotation as a rookie.
I like it. Houston at number 25. Does Christian Kirk solve all the receiver problems, do you think?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, between that, obviously the Tank Dell injury, so you have different stuff going on there. Houston is another team where the offensive line, big need. But again, the way that the board falls here, Zabel is a guy I've been giving to Houston a lot in this spot, but he's gone. Banks is gone. So would you pull up an offensive lineman to try to help that? Everyone remembers what happened to C.J. Stroud latter half of last season as far as their offensive line goes. You'd have to pull up a guy like Jaxson or Booker, or you could do the receiver thing. I'm going to go with the receiver here. I think that would help out Houston more, just with the way the board's fallen. If Zabel was here, I would have gone with Zabel or Banks. Them being off the board, I'm going to go with the wide receiver. And I think I'm going to reunite C.J. Stroud with his collegiate teammate, Emeka Egbuka, and give him the super reliable guy in the slot, guy who can handle heavy targets, heavy usage right away. I thought it was interesting. Ohio State in money down, 3rd, 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. You'd see them just fire the ball into Egbuka no matter what the coverage circumstance was on him, because they trusted him to make the play, move the chains. Guy who was great in contested situation because of that, even closer to the line of scrimmage. We'll send Emeka Egbuka a reunion with his collegiate quarterback, C.J. Stroud.
If the top level offensive lineman isn't going to be on the board, I think they really made a statement when they traded Tunsil this offseason, because we all knew the Texans have this terrible offensive line. And if Tunsil is as good as people claim that he is, well, he wasn't open anyway. It's not like they needed him. Their offensive line was absolutely trashed, and they had one of the better offensive linemen. That having one good offensive lineman really isn't doing you much. So Houston's better prerogative here is probably try to get an impact offense or defensive player with this first round pick, and then just pick 4 offensive linemen the rest of the draft.
Yeah, exactly, Mayo, to your point. And I thought that was interesting. You had that move, and then you couple that with, they were the ones that took the flyer on Cam Robinson when some of those other teams initially, they were a little bit skittish by some of the things they had heard about Cam Robinson in the building as far as the work ethic goes. But you take the 1-year flyer on Cam Robinson, it's the best, situation theoretically for a guy like that. If you got to prove it again, and then you can sort of roll this thing over, you can get help at other positions and sort of load yourself up with more developmental balls of clay later on if you're Houston. And then, of course, next off season, you could get way more aggressive with it. It just didn't fall right for you this time.
Rams at 26. There's no chance they have a better draft this year than last year, but who can they take right now?
I think you'd be looking either offensive tackle, not necessarily an immediate one, but, they brought back Alaric Jackson, the left tackle, but Havenstein, he's only got the 1 year left at right tackle, and then they don't have much depth behind that. I think that would be up there. Cornerback, I think maybe linebacker, but the couple linebackers you could take, I don't think that they would keep Schlesinger home here. Schlesinger, more of a round two guy for me. So I think maybe you take the offensive tackle and you could get a potential discount on one by taking Josh Simmons here. Josh Simmons would have definitely, the Ohio State tackle would have definitely been ranked higher had he not gotten knocked out for the season against Oregon in the regular season. You know, that big tilt they had in Eugene in October. That's when Simmons got knocked out for the season. Simmons came up from San Diego State. He was great there and playing left tackle. The snaps that we saw him there, high leverage situation for Ohio State. He moves really, really well, has a good idea of what he's doing, gets good depth, keeps the distance with the defensive lineman, getting the depth there. I like the way he sets up in pass protection. And in this scenario, you get him at a bit of a discount. And then for this coming season, you can go a little bit slower with him initially coming off of that injury because you have your two tackles here. So we'll go with Josh Simmons.
All right. Next up is going to be Baltimore at number 27 and version 1.0 of this draft. They took, who did they take in this one? It was Jalen Walker, I believe they took, who ended up going up to number 8 when we did it this time around. So they're without their pick from last time. What are they going to see at number 27 on this board?
No, but yeah, I mean, people have fallen down to them, and in particular, this one, you have the edge rushers who have fallen down here. So you know, you would have your pick theoretically between Green, between Michael Williams, and between Ezaraku. We're about to have a run here on the edge rushers for Baltimore. I'm going to toss them Mike Green. You know, Mike Green in these mocks, you see he is going a bit higher. He had a very good pre-draft process. There are questions about the off-field, the circumstances surrounding his dismissal from Virginia. And sometimes when you're on the clock there, you see the tiebreakers go to the other guy. And you see in some scenarios like this, we've seen this in previous years, a guy like this, maybe you don't think it's a big of a deal heading in, but then he starts to lose some tiebreaker decisions. He ends up going later in the round than maybe you thought initially. That is a potential depending on the way that this plays out. But Baltimore, I think, would be thrilled with Mike Green falling down here.
How about Detroit at number 28? Where do you think that now that they're without their offensive coordinator, without their defensive coordinator, do they try to figure out what side do you think hurts more for them going into the season, where they would try to make an impact immediately?
Well, the loss of the offensive court, Ben Johnson, I think hurts way more, you know, because Campbell, he's not your X's and O's guy. He's your classic sort of CEO type. And you had the two different dudes running, you know, both sides of the ball. Everybody loved the creativity they seen with Detroit's offense the last couple of years. So it will be interesting to see without Ben Johnson, the thing where it seemed to be more the sum of its parts on offense for Detroit the last couple of years. And of course, they ended up building that thing up. So maybe last year notwithstanding what I was saying, but like previous, you know, obviously they had a good offensive line. They had two running backs at that point. But it's going to be interesting to see with the schematics how that ends up changing. But I think so that as far as the play caller, but I think the defense needs more help here, in particular across from Aiden Hutchinson on the edge. You have Hutchinson coming off the injury. They re-signed Marcus Davenport. That's a road to nowhere. Every year with a Marcus Davenport 1-year contract, he never gives you anything. You need another edge there either way. So we're going to put that, and that's the way that the board has fallen here with the value. I'm going to send Donovan Ezaraku from Boston College to Detroit. I think that's the kind of dude that they would be interested. You know, it's your kneecap biter. Ezaraku, he's unorthodox. He's sawed off, 6'2.5", around 250 pounds. I went into his film expecting to poo-poo him, discount him, and come out seeing him as a day 2 guy. He grows on you the more that you watch him. He's extremely unorthodox, you know, again, but he has the super long wingspan. His wingspan is up there near the top of this edge class, even at the lower height. And because of this, he's able to keep distance to work with. And then he just shuffles through different moves, you know, whether it's the pass rush move or whether it's just the shed move. He's able to do that because he is able to keep the distance from you. And it's a good athlete, right? Like in that size. I also like him as a run defender. It's not a guy that's, you know, like the clean edge thing. It's not always, you know, like Michael or like Shemar Stewart, but it's a guy who breaches into the backfield and will pull the pin out of the grenade right away, right? Even pursuing on the back end. So there's a lot of things to like about him. And I think Detroit's philosophy, as an organization, when they're looking over these edges, if Ezeraku's there, I think that's a fit.
Washington has made a bunch of different moves over the course of the offseason. They're clearly going all in with Jaden Daniels on this rookie contract to put as much around him as possible. And I assume this means they have to take someone who can deliver an impact immediately. They're not looking for a project. Who are they going to take?
I think this one, the big time leader in the clubhouse, edge defender that plays both ways of it. Edge defender that you get the pass rushing utility, but more important to Washington, they want the edge defender who is really, really good in run defense and sets that clean edge, plays team football and run defense. Last year during their run, Dante Fowler, he was racking up sacks. They benched him. Why? It wasn't because of the sack production. It was because they couldn't trust him in the run. And all of a sudden you had all these leaks on their run defense. They want an edge defender, again, that is going to set that clean edge every time. You can set your watch on it. Fortunately for them, this scenario falls down to them. If it hadn't, we probably would have deferred to a boundary cornerback. You saw in the Eagles matchup there, having to play Sanders still outside. Sanders still is a nickel. You have to move him back inside. So you need a boundary corner that has a little bit more size there to do that. But that, with the way that this scenario is fallen, you're going to defer that to day two, and you're going to take the two-way edge here. Michael Williams from Georgia. Again, him and Shemar Stewart from Texas A&M. Georgia and A&M, they play similar sort of philosophies on the defensive front, both in terms of the rotation that they have coming in, but they also give those guys containment responsibilities more so than some other teams. Nick Scorton, the other A&M edge defender, was talking about this at the NFL Combine about how they didn't always get to pin their ears back. You've heard that same thing from Georgia defenders coming out in the past to explain why the counting stats were down a little bit, both those two things. And that is the case here, but they're guys that the well-rounded games, obviously the measurables there, Georgia and Kirby Smart, they don't recruit any other way. But Michael Williams is going to take care of your run defense on one side of that defensive line. And I think that would be a perfect fit with Washington here.
Okay, that means we have Buffalo. Who can they take to get them to the Super Bowl? Not win the Super Bowl. That could be like 3 years from now. How about just get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, you're probably looking at on the defensive side of the ball, right? Like the idea of Burden, it's interesting, but you already have the slot receiver there. You already have Dalton Kincaid, who I would prefer, not playing inline. Obviously, you have Dawson Knox there. So I don't know what kind of value add that would be. Seems like sort of superfluous as far as that goes. So I'm getting off of that and going to defense, whether that be edge, whether that be corner. One of those just came off the board here. Would you go Amos? Would you go Maxwell Hairston? If you go corner, the edge run here a couple picks ago was looking great. Now all of a sudden you've gotten a bunch of them wiped off the board. I think, what do we got? 3 straight edge picks. I think for me though, I'm gonna go with the cornerback here, and I'm gonna go with Maxwell Hairston, the kid from Kentucky that I do expect to be a first round pick. He would solve one of the Bills, the hole there at the boundary cornerback. You can play him out there. You can trust his speed, fabulous makeup speed. Maxwell Hairston was the only guy that I saw chase down Isaiah Bond from behind last season. Isaiah Bond, he didn't get to run downfield too often, so we didn't get more opportunity, but Maxwell Harrison definitely chased him down. The speed plays there, and he's a feisty corner as well, getting in your face. He loves the press on the outside as well. I think Harrison be a good fit for Buffalo.
That leaves the Super Bowl loser, Kansas City Chiefs, with pick number 31 in this draft. Who are they taking?
Chiefs, you're whether it be the offensive trenches, I think is one that a lot of us have focused on. Wide receiver is another one potentially lingering here, but you already gave your slot role to Rashee Rice, and you have other guys that can play that. Would you actually go with Luther Burden and keep him home? I don't know about that. It's a guy that Luther Burden has to play in the slot, and then it's your manufactured touch guy. I don't know if that's a fit here, so I'm not going to do that for him. I think probably we go trenches here and try to improve the offensive line. You know what? I'm going to go with Donovan Jackson, the guard from Ohio State, a guy that I think is a late first round type of prospect. I like him more than Tyler Booker, and I'm curious if the NFL ends up agreeing with me on that. Donovan Jackson, way better athlete than Tyler Booker. He also has tackle versatility. If you don't believe me, I mentioned the injury that Josh Simmons had, the Oregon game in October. Ohio State, the next 2 games, they tried to get through with a backup left tackle, and those were the games where the line got caved in and Will Howard kept getting sacked. They figured it out, though. 2 weeks later, they kick out Donovan Jackson there. They're like, why don't we just try our best offensive lineman? We'll just move him to left tackle. Solve the problem right then. If Donovan Jackson wasn't as awesome as he was and sacrificing for the team, right? I mean, this is the end of his audition there. It's his last 6, 7, 8 games in college. you could understand if Donovan Jackson's like, nah, I'm good, right? Like, I don't want to put tackle tape out there, just jump over there sight unseen. He did. He was tremendous. He shut down James Pierce, the Tennessee edge rusher in the college football play. If he did more than that, he was almost perfect there. I'm going to go with Donovan Jackson.
All right, last pick of the first round, which will conclude the final mock draft on the Pat Mayo Experience for 2025. Who the Eagles taking?
I think I'm going to go with Malachi Starks here, and it's just too delicious. You know, Malachi Starks, the guy probably should go higher. That's within the ethos of the Eagles either way, but it's a Georgia defender. And Howie Roseman cannot help himself. You know, whether it's stopping the fall, the guy that shouldn't be there, or whether it's merely just drafting that sweet, sweet Georgia defender. Georgia defense, one of the nastiest, you know, that we see 3 years ago, those national titles when they went back to back. Howie Roseman is essentially constructing that thing on the back end and just grabbing them one by one. Here's another one for your collection. He's like Thanos. You know, you get another thing for his little deal there. We'll go with Malachi Starks.
Get another thing for his little deal there. That you were rapping on the last show. I didn't put you on a big Marvel guy anyway, so that works out fine. We can bookend it that way. You're a big Ludacris guy, not a big Marvel guy.
Well, you know, I starred in those movies, as you know, and I don't want to give any spoiler alerts. We're a little bit far out, but I think you know who took out that Thanos guy, so I'm not going to give him any respect here. I mean, you know who took him out in the movie, so, I mean, it is what it is.
Listen, I'm a 40-year-old, but I'm married, so clearly I haven't seen those movies.
It was Thor.
Oh,
I hope everyone out there has seen it.
You ruined the movie for me. No one's ever.
We do not respect Thanos around here. Sorry.
There we are, dude. You got like one more week till you can get some sleep. Again, tell everyone where they can find the top 500 big board with an additional 250 profiles.
Yeah, you can find that on Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, fantasylife.com. And then check me out on Twitter at ThorKU. I'll have all the different links, you know, to all the different stuff, and mock drafts, the position rankings. We rank out 725, 750 players there. But the 500 player big board is with my 500 comps. We have a comp on every single guy. So check that out at Fantasy Life.
Thor, thanks again for lending us so much of your time. Double the amount of time this year, and you had to do all the heavy lifting by yourself this time around. We'll get me, you, and Ray back together again for next year. I'm so glad we did this a month ago now, because we wouldn't have been able to do it.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, we kept the tradition going, so that was good enough, and always a pleasure to join you, Mr. Mayo.
Absolutely. You can follow me at the PME. Smash the like while you're here. Sub to Mayo Media Network if you just want the full result of the mock draft. Spoiler, they were in the description the whole time, as are those giveaways, as is the code to get in on that $1,000 deposit for Underdog, and there's just a bunch of goodies down there if you want to go check it out. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!